So you develop the foundations of your vibrato, and now you're trying to add variety, control, and also your special own individualistic voice. Let's talk about how to do it. Before diving into this video, you should already have a relaxed and open vibrato. If not, check out this video right here. If you do already have a functioning vibrato, this video is going to take it to the next level. I would say that vibrato, more than anything else, defines your sound uniquely compared to other people. You recognize Heifetz's voice more than anything from the way that he vibrates. And while we all want to develop control over changing the speed and the width of our vibrato, I do feel like most players have a default vibrato that defines them. The next stage in developing a vibrato is all about learning how to control the different variables in your vibrato. The main variables that we can adjust are the speed and the width of each oscillation. This is an example of a very narrow and fast vibrato. This is a slow and a wide vibrato. These are the basic variables that we have to change our vibrato. The first exercise I like to use to develop control over these variables is moving from one extreme of vibrato to another extreme of vibrato. So from no vibrato whatsoever to fast and narrow. At the end of this one, you want to get to the point where there's a nice sizzle to it and you can almost see the smoke rising from your finger. The next one is moving to the other extreme. So no vibrato to fast and wide. And then I do also like to linger on the extreme for a period of time. On this one, I like to go beyond the point that I would basically ever want to use in a piece, just so I know that I have the furthest extreme of vibrato that I could ever want in a piece. Now, when I just demonstrated these to you, I did them much faster than I normally would. I like to linger on them for about 30 seconds each, so that I have a little bit of time at every single speed along the progression to the next extreme. In particular, I love to linger at that moment where you can almost not tell that the vibrato is there. I think this is actually a really special color that is useful in all sorts of pieces. It's just such a special sound to have this little bit of shimmer. I feel like it makes the audience perk up and take interest in what's going on. Now, once you have a little bit of control over the speed and width, you can start using variations in that speed and width to create interest in certain phrases. Here's meditation, for example. Develops with the phrase. So you probably noticed that as I was crescendoing, the intensity of the vibrato generally increased. And then there were moments where I brought the vibrato back so I had room to grow again. Having this nuance in your vibrato rather than an on and an off switch is really critical to starting to have a little bit more of an artistic voice when you're playing. Coming up with specific plans for how you're going to develop your vibrato on phrases or even specific notes can be very, very important to creating the kind of colors that you want and the phrasing that you want. So that exercise is designed to specifically help you gain greater control over different speeds and widths of your vibrato, meaning the speed and width remain constant. If I don't have consistency, then my vibrato is likely to sound warbly. It's not so much that it's too wide or too narrow, it's just that it's not consistent. Oftentimes players will think that when a vibrato sounds warbly, it just means that it's too wide. That's often not the case. If you have a very wide vibrato and it's very, very consistent, it can sound very good. For me, that's very much a wide vibrato, but the sound still has focus to it. There's still a pure pitch. Now, of course, we can have the vibrato develop into a wider vibrato or a faster vibrato, but it has to be very organic in the way that it moves. If there's suddenly one oscillation that's very different from the one before, it destroys the magic. So after developing control over the speed and width of vibrato in the exercises, then just have fun playing around with it in your pieces. Come up with specific plans for how you're going to develop your vibrato throughout a phrase, or even a specific note to get the kind of sounds that you're after. It's through this thoughtful process that you'll really develop a lot of nuance in your vibrato. Okay, the other thing that I want to think about developing is your individualistic voice. And I really like to do this through imitation. Now, there's great power in imitation, or even imagining that you're one of your violinistic heroes. For instance, if you want to become a great shooter in basketball, it's actually helpful for you to visualize yourself as Steph Curry while you're practicing your shooting. So one thing that I did to try and expand my vibrato, and I noticed a lot of difference while I was doing it, was when I was doing my scales, I would try to imitate the vibratos of some of my favorite players. In particular, I found great benefit from imitating the vibratos of Oistrakh, Heifetz, Joseph Hasid, and even Stéphane Grappelli, who is a great jazz violinist who has a remarkably loose and wide vibrato, almost to the point of being distasteful if you would use it in classical music. Pushing the extremes of my vibrato allowed me to sort of relax back into a vibrato that I felt passionate about. As you're doing this, I don't think you ever really have to worry about losing your individualistic voice. I feel like the nuances of how we vibrate are varied enough that it's very unlikely that you're ever going to completely sound like somebody else. And hey, if you end up sounding like Heifetz, that's not the end of the world either. So when I think about Heifetz's vibrato, I think of a constant fast vibrato with perhaps a little bit of favoring wide vibrato. This is what I would be doing if I was trying to imitate Heifetz's vibrato. Now, to our modern sensibilities, this seems like a lot of vibrato. But after I do a whole scale of that, or perhaps a whole scale progression of that, my vibrato is feeling loose, it's feeling free, and if I want to tone it down, easy to do that. Since I mentioned Stéphane Grappelli as well as being such an extreme vibrato, I'll try to imitate his as well. Basically, experimenting with a lot of different voices and vibrato types will help you to experiment with sounds that perhaps you wouldn't have found if you were just thinking about playing like yourself. When I was working on this myself, I would choose a different violinist to try and imitate every time that I would do my scales. Even if I didn't completely accurately portray the vibrato of whoever I was trying to imitate, it still forced me to break out of my default vibrato and develop more nuance. I would encourage you to do the same thing, particularly if you find your vibrato a little bit bland. Force yourself to push your limits and use the mind's power of imitation to help to stretch yourself. And when you're doing it, don't just try to be like Heifetz, imagine you are Heifetz. And it actually has a bit of a psychological benefit to doing it that way. Finally, I'd like to add just a couple of bonus ideas that I'm constantly reminding my students when I find that their vibrato is having some issues. First, the idea of continuous vibrato is very important to me. While we don't always want to use it, we always want it to be possible. The violin was made to imitate the sound of a voice. And when vocalists vibrate, it's very effortless. And it's just an aspect of their sound. They're not thinking, okay, I go to this note and I vibrate, and I go to this note and I start vibrating again. No, vibrato is simply an aspect of the sound. It naturally happens as the air passes through their vocal cords. We want to imitate this. Vibrato should simply be an aspect of the sound. When we switch fingers, the vibrato in the sounds should simply continue. One thing that's helpful when you're trying to develop this is to imagine that the whole hand is what's vibrating, not a finger. So instead of thinking of first finger vibrato to fourth finger vibrato, I simply think of the whole hand vibrating continually, no matter what finger is down. This is also very helpful in fast passages where you want a little shimmer of vibrato. One other thing I like to think about when I'm shifting and trying to keep my vibrato continuous is I like to use the momentum of the placement of the new finger as an impetus for continuing the vibrato. When I place that finger, I use that energy as part of the vibrato. This is really effective if you're trying to shift to a high note and immediately get a brilliant sound. Finally, I would encourage you to practice using non-vibrato as well. There was a point in my time as a music student where I really didn't have the ability to have non-vibrato, and that really restricted the amount of expression that I could use. Vibrato has more meaning when contrasted with non-vibrato. And if you don't have the ability to have no vibrato at all, it's really difficult to access those special colors where you barely have any vibrato at all and you get that shimmer. I hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has, please drop a like and subscribe, and check out this series on mastering double stops.